Looking to save some money by replacing your worn tie rods yourself? Well, we've got you covered. In this video, we'll walk you through a simple step-by-step process to get it done. To start, it's important to replace your tie rods occasionally, especially when worn out, to maintain proper steering control and alignment of your car. Now, here are the steps involved in the process. 1. Jack up the vehicle. Start by parking your car on a flat surface and applying the parking brake. Place blocks or wheel chocks behind the rear tires to keep your car from moving. Find the jacking points on your vehicle, usually in the manual, and use a jack to lift the front of the car until the wheels are off the ground. Place jack stands under the car near the jacking points and lowers the car onto the stands. Make sure that your car is stable before continuing. 2. Remove the wheel. The next step you should do is loosen the lug nuts while the vehicle is still on the ground. Use a lug wrench or tire iron to turn each lug nut counterclockwise. Don't remove them completely yet, just loosen them. After that, jack up the vehicle further until the wheel is off the ground. Once it's lifted, finish removing the lug nuts and take the wheel off to expose the tie rod. 3. Inspect and remove the tie rod end. After that, find the tie rod end, which is connected to the steering knuckle. It's usually located near the wheel area. On some vehicles, it's held in place by a small metal pin called a cotter pin and a castle nut. To remove the cotter pin, use pliers to straighten it out, then pull it through the hole. Once the pin is out, use a correctly sized wrench or socket to unscrew the castle nut by turning it counterclockwise. 4. Separate the tie rod end. Next, use a tie rod separator tool or a ball joint separator to remove the tie rod end from the steering knuckle. Place the tool between the tie rod end and the steering knuckle and tighten it according to the tool's instructions. This will apply pressure to push the tie rod end out. You might need to tap the tool lightly with a hammer if it's stuck, but be cautious not to hit anything too hard to avoid damaging parts. 5. Measure and note position. Now, before taking off the old tie rod end, use a measuring tape to measure the length of the tie rod from the end to a fixed point, like the inner tie rod or another nearby part. Then, when you start unscrewing the tie rod end, count how many full turns it takes to completely remove it. Write this number down. This will help you screw the new tie rod end back into the same position, making it easier to keep your vehicle's alignment correct. 6. Remove the tie rod. This time, unscrew the tie rod end from the inner tie rod by turning it counterclockwise with your hand or a wrench if needed. Again, you must keep track of how the tie rod end is positioned by paying attention to the number of turns it takes to remove it. This will help you install the new tie rod end in the same orientation and position to keep everything aligned properly. 7. Install the new tie rod. Now, for the key step, screw the new tie rod end onto the inner tie rod by turning it clockwise. Make sure to match the length and orientation you noted earlier. Use the number of turns you counted when removing the old one to ensure the new tie rod end is in the correct position. 8. Attach the tie rod end. Reattach the tie rod end to the steering knuckle. Place the new castle nut onto the end and tighten it using a wrench or socket, following the manufacturer's specifications for how tight it should be. Once the nut is tight, insert a new cotter pin through the hole in the nut and bend the ends of the pin to secure it in place. This will keep the nut from coming loose. 9. Reinstall the wheel. Now, it's time to put the wheel back on by tightening the lug nuts by hand. Just turn them in until they are snug. Once the vehicle is lowered back to the ground, use a wrench to fully tighten each lug nut in a star pattern. This means you tighten one nut, then move to the nut directly across from it, and continue this pattern until all nuts are tight. This helps ensure the wheel is evenly secured. 10th, check and adjust alignment. After replacing the tie rods and assuming you're finished, you still have to check your vehicle's alignment. To do this, take your car to an auto repair shop with alignment tools. The technicians will use tools to ensure the wheels are properly aligned, which is important for safe driving and helps prevent uneven tire wear. 11th, test drive and final check. It's also important to take your vehicle for a short test drive to check that everything feels stable and aligned. Start by driving slowly in a straight line to see if the steering feels steady. Then, make gentle turns to make sure your car handles correctly. Listen for any unusual noises or feel for vibrations in the steering wheel or seats. If you notice anything odd, it might mean that further adjustments are needed, but if everything feels fine, then you've just replaced your tie rods perfectly. There you go. That's the step-by-step process you can follow. As for how much this would cost, it will typically cost at least $100 to $300 for parts, depending on your vehicle, and since you're going to do it yourself, it can definitely save you a significant amount of money. We hope you find this video helpful, and you can also let us know what problems you're having with your car by leaving a comment below, and we'll assist that next here on Fix It. Thanks for watching. Subscribe.